Hello and welcome to episode 145 of the Arena Regulars podcast. I'm Zach,
And I'm Jeff.
and we're a source for drunken Magic the Gathering arena content.
That's right. Just a couple of dudes drinking some irregular beers talking about Magic the Gathering, and in particular, the online client, MTG Arena.
That's right, and this episode is one of my favorites. Oh, buddy, it's our first SIPS episode for Murders at Karlov Manor, the newest Magic the Gathering set. Oh, I got lots of
This
things
is
to
what
say.
this one of your favorites? Isn't this the one where we embarrass ourselves?
I mean, we are like, yes, we'll probably embarrass ourselves. We're going to talk about our worth a slots, cards we think that are worth a slot in your deck. But yeah, and then yeah, later when the set's kind of over, we'll talk about whether we were right or not. So that's always fun. Um, but anyway, Jeff, let's take a moment, and each week we bring a beer, we drink it, we rate it on a scale from bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. And yeah, so Jeff, what's the beer we got this week? What's on tap?
Okay, this week we have Evoke. It's a beer from Indie Ale House, which is a Toronto brewer, and it is a barrel-aged golden sour,
Hmm.
and it's with real fruit, just so you know that.
Yeah,
Peach flavored, this one that we got here.
yeah, very very nice.
Yeah, interesting.
It's in a bottle and everything.
Yeah, I have to just not. I'm in my wife's office today, so I
Oh,
don't really want to explode the beer all over everything. Like in my office, that's not ideal, but
hmm, but it
it's an
happens.
acceptable outcome. Yeah, in her office, I'd really rather not go through that.
Hmm. Well, this, as you know, you hold the cork, twist the bottle, and we don't want any noise at all to come out of this guy. If we were going by like champagne rules, you want it to be like not even a little fart. You just want it to be absolutely nothing. Oh, I got a little fart there. Shoot.
Oh, mine got a real pop.
Ooh. You okay? No suds?
We're good though. Yeah,
All
we're
right.
good.
Don't ruin.
Now you just don't pour it all over everything.
Yes, yeah,
We're
that's
all
the other
right.
thing. All right, well, that's just fantastic. As we pour these beers, we do have some magic news. Obviously, the new set has launched, Murders at Karlov Manor, and it's been great. All I've been doing is drafting it, so that's been a blast. We've been having a good time on my channel. Good time, good and bad. Maybe,
Yeah.
there are some bad times. You know what? Maybe it's mostly bad,
You
but
know,
not.
actually, we've had some terrible times.
I'm gonna say it's not the set's fault. It's mostly me, um, which is to be expected. You know that meme where there's like the guy being like, "Oh, do you like this game, Magic? Oh yeah, I play it all the time." I was like, "So that means you must be good at it." It's like, no. That's how I felt for the last 3 days. Just kind of like, oh, I spend like all of my time in my entire life playing this game, and I'm not very good. Love it.
Classic.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Give it another 20 years. Maybe then we'll be good.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Ooh. So, I did want to say there are a couple weird things going on with Murders at Karlov Manor, and the reason this is in the actual notes section is because Watsy has talked about it. So, if you have drafted Murders at Karlov Manor, you may know that we have play boosters now. Now, play boosters are the new form of booster pack that we have for this year, 2024, going on. And there's a bunch of different things in different slots. There's like wild card slots in paper boosters. There's foil wild card slots, and then you also have a common slot that could also be a list card or a special guest. Um, all of this basically results into having like more rares, more uncommons, like crazy booster fun. Um, However, in Arena, drafting wise, it does seem like that it makes us have duplicates of certain cards, primarily commons and uncommons, and they are just right next to each other. So when you could open a pack and it's just like, your rare, your uncommons, all this stuff, and then like a copy of murder, and then another copy of murder right next to it. And it's really weird.
Yeah.
And it felt like a bug when it first happened. I don't know, like you had seen it, you've also ran into it, and it
Hmm.
just feels off. Like it doesn't really feel like it's supposed to happen, right?
Yeah. It does feel strange.
Hmm.
I'll say I don't think it really has much effect on like the strategic integrity of draft or anything like that. It just looks weird because that that just doesn't happen in however long you've been drafting. You'll never have seen that. So it's like,
Yeah. Or like maybe there was one time where you pulled like a common and also the same foil version of that common.
yeah,
Like,
that
but it
occasionally would happen back in the day.
rarely, like very rarely
Yeah.
will that happen. And so I
Hmm.
just thought this was a bug. And then Wizards put out a thing on Arena, like a little note being like, hey, so you may have been seeing this happening. That's because we're trying to make boosters closer to play boosters. So this will happen. You will see duplicates of cards. And I'm like, but why? 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 If you're trying to make it feel closer to paper magic, why do a thing that barely ever happens in paper? And it would happen
Yeah.
like in 3 or 4 of my packs in one draft when I first started it. I
Yeah.
was
I've
like,
seen it a few times.
so like, it's okay if it happens once in a while, like every 10 drafts, one pack has that. But like, if I'm seeing it over and over and over again, it just feels weird, and it raises some other questions. But um,
And I think there is something weird going on a little bit behind the scenes because like I posted this in our Discord, but it totally messed up my Untapped
mhm.
because my Untapped it was like I had the overlay on so that it would show you LSV's ratings for every card in the set. And then I got to this pack where it had two of the same common and the ratings on them were different.
Hmm.
So it didn't like fetch the rating on the duplicate one correctly or something.
Yeah. So it like literally thought like one of the cards was probably just a different card, which
Yeah,
is
exactly.
so weird. So I don't know what's going on. And the weirdest thing to me is that they actually set an announcement saying, "Hey, this will happen." And I was
Mhm.
like, "You didn't mean to apologize and say, "Hey, we didn't really intend for this to happen. We don't think it's a terrible thing, but like it is kind of strange. Um we would like to
Yeah,
fix
they're
it."
just
Like they're
like,
like, "No, this is like paper. We want them to be close to paper." What the fuck? It's weird. I don't like it.
yeah,
And the reason I don't like it is because now with play boosters, there are like there's some packs that have like 3 rares and there's some packs that have 1 rare. And that doesn't bother me that much. Actually, I have been able to draft a ton of cards on my no pass list because of it. Like there are
right.
so many rare lands going around because there's so many rares.
Yeah, I've been able to pick up more rare lands than I
Yeah,
usually would.
which is wonderful. However, for the specific scenario I laid out before, it is very confusing when somebody opens a pack and there's like 2 murders. They take 1 murder, pass the pack. The next person's like, "Oh, there's a murder in this pack. Black must be open." And it's like, well, no, because that person took a murder, but like
Yeah,
it looks like all the signals are confusing. The
yeah.
signals are also confusing because sometimes you get a pack with 5 uncommons in it. And so when you get a
Hmm.
pack later down the line, you're like, oh, there's 3 uncommons. They must have just taken a bunch of commons. No, it could have been a whole host of things. Now, I have absolutely no idea. I cannot fathom what's going on. I'm so like reading signals with play boosters seems impossible. Um, just like besides just like, oh, this pack has less of that color. I
Yeah.
just can't. I don't know. Um, so I don't know if it's a huge gripe of mine or it's just this is a new thing I need to get used to. But I definitely
Hmm.
need to get used to it. Like I am not.
Right.
I'm not used to this yet.
I think it's something you'll forget about where you're just like, oh yeah, at first that was weird. And now
Yeah.
it's like I still don't know, I still don't like it or whatever, but I'm
Mhm.
fine with it. Kind of like I've accepted that that's the new way things are.
Yeah, and I think with like packs with like 1 rare and 5 uncommons or whatever, because some of them were for the wild card slots and one of them was from like the list or whatever. Like that doesn't bother me that much. And like how important was the signal that my opponent passed to me that was like, oh, here's a pack with the rare and an uncommon missing. That's not really that important. Like that happens almost all the time. Like it
Yeah.
does. It's not. it just also the knowledge of them taking a common over something else, like how much information is that really giving me? Not very much.
Yeah.
So I think that like
People tend to over-index to that stuff
yeah, so
anyways.
I think
Like,
that having like a bunch of different numbers on those types of things isn't that big a deal. I do really dislike the double card thing though, especially when it's like magnifying glass. Again, it's like, sweet, this pack has two magnifying glasses in it. Okay,
right.
sweet.
It, but it kind of only matters in the case you were describing, where it's
Hmm.
like if murder was the best black common, for example.
Yeah.
If the someone opened the best common in a color, then you have this shorthand where you're like, common's missing, murder still
Hmm.
in the pack, so they're not black.
Yeah.
Because there's no way they took a black common over murder.
Over murder. Yeah.
Whereas now it's like there's a very small chance that they may have also taken murder.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I think it probably doesn't like realistically affect like it's when I said it doesn't affect the strategic like draft experience. I still don't think realistically it does very much. Like, what's the difference? Your opponent took some random common and then moved into black versus they took murder and then you thought you black was open, but you get cut off. Like,
Yeah. I mean, it. Yes, I could definitely see that, and also just like sticking to your early decisions on like what's open, what's not in pack one. Like trying to, it just maybe means you need to stay open as long as possible, more so than before. I'm not sure,
right. And
but
then past pack pick two, there's still signal there where it's like, oh, this is a pick four murder. Like that's still relevant, even if there was another murder
that's
in the
true.
pack, because it means like it's like one pick less relevant than you might have thought it was,
Hmm.
because three people didn't pass on murder, just two people passed on murder. But it's still
That's true.
like, and you never know, it could be the person right next to you that took the other murder. But
Yeah, and people are
um,
just passing double packs because then nowadays, like, is it more strategic then if you see a common that there's like it's a really, let's say it's novice inspector, which is like one of the best commons. Um, you're like, oh, there's two novice inspectors. I'll take something else and pass that along so that other people can grab those, and I don't want to be fighting over that. Impact two. I don't know. I don't know if that's
I'm sure
right.
people are going to do that. I think they probably shouldn't.
Yeah, just like
Um,
take the best common anyway, especially if you're passing to like because you're passing to them twice, so it's probably better to fuck them up to like make them think, oh, white's open. So
yeah.
like, but
Well, that's one of
I
my
don't know.
favorite things about drafting, right? It's like everyone does this, including myself, have gone through
Mhm.
this, right? Where it's like, oh man, the person to my right, like, um, they sent me mixed signals. And then I got cut off because they don't know how to draft. Like, this is bogus. But
Mhm.
then I never give a shit what happens downstream of me, where I'm like, yeah, I'll move in on black. I don't care
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they might be fucked, but that doesn't matter to me.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
then I assume that the person to my right must be like chivalrous and like
yeah.
honor the code of like sending correct signals. So
Well, there is this bomb, but it's not in my color, so I will pass it. Like no,
yeah, and then I'm actually like, ain't no way I'm passing this.
no, I'm taking this. Especially if you're playing in pod in person, you're like, no
Yeah.
way, you don't get to play that
Guy to
card.
my right does that. He's a noob.
Yeah, it's much better to be in my sideboard than to be in your main deck, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, that was just something I wanted to quickly talk about before we kind of like dive into the set. Like, how does it feel? Obviously, we've been drafting because it's just been like just started. Um, and we're still in our acquisition period as I'm trying to collect all of the cards on my no pass list, which has been
And
very
with 10
fruitful.
rare lands, it's a lot.
It is a lot. I am doing a very well, I have to say. Um,
Nice.
so that is one thing I can say that I've been doing exceptionally well is drafting rare lands. Has been great. I do like that. So I don't want to say that that's one of the reasons why I haven't been doing as well in draft, because like obviously we preach that it doesn't matter as much. Though when you see many more of them than you normally would, when you
Yeah,
come out
when
of
you're
a
giving
draft,
out 5 picks, six
yeah,
picks, that's a
you like
different story.
that's
Yeah.
basically what's been going on. It's
Yeah.
like, holy shit. Okay. I get to play a lot of them to be fair, so that's nice. But yeah, it's been quite
Pretty
quite
good and
interesting.
limited. Pretty
Yeah,
good.
they are. um, I do actually like them a lot more as we're playing with them. I'm like, oh, this is great. I like this a lot.
Surveil is a big improvement over Scry.
Huge
I think people
improvement.
tend to like equate them and they know Surveil is like slightly better or like Surveil is better. But I think
Is
there's a bigger delta than people tend
much
to
better,
think. Yeah.
especially with just all
Um,
the different things that we are using, like the graveyard with, and that we're kind of going into the space of like every deck should or every color should be able to use their graveyard somehow. Um,
yeah,
Surveil, it just becomes much better. It's not just like,
it's
oh,
also true. Yeah.
you want the green black one and that's it. Like it's
Right.
just not the
Surveil is
case.
better in green black, pretty much the same in white,
Hmm.
red. Yeah. Um, yeah, the set feels good. I'm always thinking about like, would I get it if I didn't know? Um, I don't know if I'd be able to peg this as a murder mystery necessarily if there was no marketing around it, anything like that. But I don't
Hmm.
think that's the bar. Like when they're trying to do these more creative, let's say like themes other than just build a world with a theme and like, you know, marketing is a part of it. Like
Hmm.
I do know that this is a murder mystery and then I start to see stuff, but it definitely feels like, like detectives are everywhere,
They are
clues are
everywhere.
everywhere.
Hmm.
Like it really definitely the mystery part you get for sure. You're like, something's being investigated. Like that's what is happening in this
Absolutely.
set. Um, the whole thing of like, without seeing the special suspect cards and all that, I'm not sure
Hmm.
you'd pick out in particular. It's like murder mystery, but definitely like the mystery theme is
Hmm.
really strong. Like some of the cards that care about detectives, I think are just good because like 90% of the white common creatures you want to play just happen to be detectives. So
Yeah.
it's like I was blown away by some of them because some of them look like cards that they would do that sneaky thing Wizards likes to do where they make a common
And
and
it's
then they just
just,
make it not the creature type that matters. You're like,
hmm,
oh,
like, oh,
this
great.
could
Thanks a
so
lot.
easily be the creature type that matters. They've done very little of that. Where just like almost everything in like blue and white just is a detective.
Yeah. Like, and there's like, yeah, it's not half. I think there's like three or four of the common dual colored morphs which come up everywhere are detectives, and they just end up
Right.
being really helpful in all those synergies. Granite Witness specifically is a great blue white detective, um, but like, yeah, all those things around it. I will say this is something that was kind of talked about when the set was first kind of previewed and Wizards had spotlighted it and talked about it. Um, which is why are we having a murder mystery set on Ravnica as opposed to like New Capenna? Because I do agree there are a lot of New Capenna feelings around this, like Topiary Panther reminds me of Topiary Stomper, and like
Hmm.
obviously there's just like there's a maze, a hedge maze, and there's like all these there's a bit of the vibe of like city and crime, which is basically what New Capenna was like a city of crime, but everyone's like
Yeah.
mafia crimeness. There's a ton of fedoras around and all that kind of stuff. Um, but I like that they did it in Ravnica. Like, so this is the reasoning officially. If this is something that you're kind of stuck on or whatever, officially the reasoning is that in New Capenna there's no real like laws or like police essentially. And for a murder mystery or crime thing to happen, you need some sort of detective agency or some sort of like law enforcement to be after someone. And that's why they chose Ravnica, because there's actually like police there.
Really clearly
Um,
delineated,
yes, like
like, yeah, law
and like
enforcement.
and also very clear lines of like rules that the guilds have to abide by, and they do, as opposed to New Capenna where like everyone kind of just like hates each other and like kills them randomly. I guess I don't really know. Um,
That's what I was going to say, right? Like the challenge of making a murder mystery set in Magic, or one of the challenges, is people like there's combat and people are dying in the stories all the
yeah.
time.
Hmm.
Like even if you like extend your belief beyond the just the central characters that we have access to. If you just think about everyone else, just like the
Who just
random Joe
lives.
shows citizens
Hmm.
who die, because for a while Magic was criticized for never killing off any of its characters,
Hmm.
but like people in those planes were getting killed all the time. It just wasn't ever to fair.
Yeah.
Um, and so a murder mystery is like fundamentally centered on the fact that like murder is a pretty
Big
serious
deal.
and like
Hmm.
heinous, yeah, big deal is exactly it. And so that's like right out the gate when they said they were doing that. I'm like, how are you doing that in a? It's like, what if Mortal Kombat said they're gonna have a murder mystery party? It's like, what? These people literally murder each other all the time. Like that's just life
Yeah.
in the
In that,
world. People die.
and they come back to
Um,
life, and then they go bad, and then the bad guys are good, and then they jump around, and
right.
then they go. There's a time sequence, and they go back in time, and they start over again. Yeah. So.
And so Ravnica also having access to like guild leaders
Hmm.
as someone they can kill off as being the victim of the murder, but also having it feel like there's still that magnitude there of um, people are would take this seriously
Hmm.
rather than like why do they suddenly care about this murder in particular? Like New Capena would just be like they're literally all crime families. It's like
Yeah.
there's a reason there's no like murder mystery mafia
Hmm.
like crossover movie. It's because like mafia movies have so many murders in them all the time that it's
Yeah.
like you can't have a whole inquisition for each one.
It's usually just like usually in a mafia movie, you know exactly who did it, and you go and kill them immediately.
Right, like
Yeah.
there's retribution.
Like that's what that story is.
Yeah,
um and it's just like getting them before they get you. Essentially, it's not the same as like we're trying to bring you to justice or whatever. um
right.
so I'd also like to say, um there were the same folks who are like, oh, this is Ravnica because it doesn't feel like a guild set. Like I want all the guild mechanics and all of that to be like in play and stuff. And I say no, I disagree 100%. I
Mhm.
think I'm fucking tired of Ravnica. We needed a shakeup. I think that visiting a plane 3 times, we come back for the fourth time. We need something else. I'm so happy that we aren't just going back to like, well, we're doing Convoke again, and we're
Right.
making
And
tokens,
they've
and
explicitly said that too, like maybe not from the creative team, more from the designing team
mhm,
on that reason why, murder mysteries on Ravnica. But they've explicitly said like people love the characters and the
mhm.
guild system and all that. But from a design standpoint, like basically what they explicitly wanted was let's go back to Ravnica and not just make a Ravnica set.
Exactly. Yeah,
Which is something they were trying to do with War of the Spark a little bit. So they're trying to like explore different ways to do that,
which
which to me is great.
I'm super on board with, um, because
And
like,
it's so hard for them to make two color sets that aren't Ravnica now because people are like, oh, I wish this was just Ravnica. And then it's like, well,
mhm,
all right, well, it's Ravnica, but we want to do something different
yeah.
mechanically with two color sets.
And so even the people, like, I don't think that's a lot of our listeners, but I think there are people out there who have been complaining on Twitter and different spaces, just being like, oh, but I want this and blah blah blah. It's like,
Just it's just not a
ah,
Ravnica set then. Like, be
just
cool.
go.
Like,
We've done it. Like we've done it so many times. Just go back and look at those ones
do you
again.
complain about, uh Midnight Hunt because it wasn't a Ravnica set? Like,
It's a
just don't think of this one as a Ravnica set.
it's also just like, yeah, you can definitely think like, oh, it's just not a Ravnica cassette, or like it's like getting frustrated with um a movie that you like a lot. Let's say you like the first movie, you like the second, you like the third. Slowly they get a little bit more contrived, but you're like, yeah, but it's that movie, I like it. And then they come up with another one that has a completely different take. The fourth movie is just like something else, but we could use a lot of the same characters. Be like, oh, it doesn't feel like that movie. I was like, yeah, because they had to do something different because they had the second and the third one, and they
Right.
were basically carbon copies of the first one. And so now we get to do something new and like actually interesting and innovative. Like, yeah, it still has the title, but like this one doesn't even have the title. It doesn't even say Ravnica in it at all. It's just set
Right.
there. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just bugs me a little bit because I want people to. This is like small, teeny tangent, but uh, so John
This is like a
Carpenter.
sub-tangent because we were already on a bit of a
I
teeny
know.
tiny tangent.
So
So
John Carpenter made the Halloween movies. John Carpenter. I'm pretty positive. Let me just double check that before I look like a horrible asshole. But so uh, John Carpenter made Halloween, and so the first two Halloween movies um, came out. Yes, I'm right. Whew, I was worried.
I love how extreme you are about getting it right about who made which movie. It makes you a
Well,
horrible asshole if you get it wrong.
do you know horror movie fans? Come on, come on. And I know some of our listeners know exactly what I'm talking about. So the first two Halloween movies are about the same night. So the first one's about Michael Myers. The second one is like happens immediately after happens in the first one. The
Mhm.
third Halloween movie has nothing to do with Michael Myers. It's called Seasons of the Witch. It's really interesting. It's a great, fun movie. You should definitely watch it. But it is a new Halloween story that just like has it's a bunch of Halloween vibes. There's all this stuff happening, but Michael Myers isn't in it, and everybody hated it. They thought it was terrible, and they were so furious that John Carpenter would make this movie that didn't have Michael Myers in it. And he was like, "Well, the whole point of the series was that we would have a bunch of different Halloween movies called Halloween something, and they
Right,
would take place on Halloween, but they didn't. They were just a bunch of different stuff."
right. They were
And people said, "Fuck you! I want Michael Myers." And then they made it. The fourth one
brought
was
him back.
just
Yeah,
they
of
brought him
course they
back,
did.
and that's all. And then the entire franchise is Michael Myers. But what if we lived in a world where we had a Halloween franchise, and each year we got a different Halloween movie that was completely different about a different Halloween story that was scary about something just a, just completely different? I think that would be a wonderful world to live in. That is not the world we live in. So anyway,
Yeah, people
that's
just want the same movie, but different for
just
some reason. They
they
want
just want
Michael Myers to be a little older.
yeah, and just I don't know. Now he's a weird zombie guy, I guess.
Yes.
Anyway, that's my mini teeny tangent on let the great ones be there and then try something different. Um, because I'm a big advocate for that. So I like this set. In conclusion, that's what I'm trying to say. I like that we're doing something new, and I'm so happy that this is the first one, and we start with such a marquee set, and now we're going to move on to all this other stuff in the future. It's great.
Although to extend the mini tangent, because I've just thought of this, to be fair, I watched semi recently. I'm very, very behind on movies and TV shows that are good. Like
You have a kid. It's
perennially,
it's fine.
I was way behind even before that, but
I didn't
but I
want to
like to
mention that,
like
but
I need people to like recommend things to me for like a decade, and then I'll be like,
mhm.
okay, they've held up this recommendation. I've heard it from a few other people. It must actually be good.
Okay,
Um, that's not actually going on in my mind, but sometimes it feels that way because I'll be like, "Have you heard of
sure.
this show?" And they're like, "Yes, of
Yeah,
course."
dude.
Have you heard of Game of Thrones? Um,
No, nobody says that anymore.
yeah.
Even though there's the new one out, nobody watches that show.
Didn't even know there was a new one. But semi recently watched True Detective for the first time.
Yeah.
And I got into it and I liked season one. Like it wasn't perfect. I thought there was some stuff that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but
Mhm.
overall I thought it was kind of cool and like
Full disclosure, I haven't watched any True Detective,
oh,
but
you
my
haven't seen it
wife
at all.
not
Okay.
not at all. But my wife really likes it. A bunch of my acting
Okay.
friends like the first season, and I had someone tells you, oh, you need to watch this show, and I was like, I don't want to listen to you. I want to do
Right.
whatever I want to
Yeah,
do.
I'll
You
do
know.
my thing.
Hmm.
Well, this is about because you explicitly called out season one.
Hmm.
Each season is like a totally different story and cast and all that. And I just didn't know that. So I just watched season one and then I go to season two and I'm like, what the hell is this?
What the hell is this?
This is completely different.
Hmm.
And I, not that that was like so upsetting that I didn't watch it, but it kind of was like, oh, so I'm kind of done. This is a good like stopping point.
Hmm.
And if I want to embark on this brand new story, I
You
can do
can,
that.
yeah.
And I just never have. So I guess
Hmm.
I was kind of like the people that are complaining that it wasn't just more of the same. But I was like, just it just took me by surprise, and then I Googled it. I'm like, oh, each season is like a totally different
Yeah.
thing. That's kind of cool in theory,
Yeah.
but I'm not gonna watch this now.
Well, so the fourth one came out recently with Jodie Foster. She's like the main character in it, and apparently there were some ties to the first one in the fourth one, as far as like cases that they were working. Um,
Okay.
so my wife's been watching it, and she'll just tell me like, "Oh, that thing that she just said, the person she's talking about was in this season," and blah blah blah. So you can tie little strings to it. Similar to like American Horror Story, where they had like each season was a different story, but that was a show where they used all the same actors, but the actors would play different characters each season.
Hmm.
Um, and so
Interesting.
then like there were different horror genres per season, but like the whatever the mom from this one's the crazy nurse in the next one or
Right.
whatever.
What's the
Um,
other show I've seen that's kind of like Fargo, I think. The seasons are
oh, is it?
different, but there are tie-ins where it's
Oh,
like, oh, this is a reference to that. I, I might be thinking of the wrong show, but I think it
I'm
was
not sure.
Fargo.
Anyway, um, let's talk about magic.
Oh,
So
right. Yes.
this is a podcast about magic. I forget sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so I did want to talk about like draft probably specifically because obviously that's what we've been playing.
I've
Um,
played one sealed event. I started with sealed, and then I was like, I want to draft.
nice. I mean, I also technically started with sealed, but that was at a pre-release,
Right.
which
Yeah, I
went really
did
well.
my own version of the pre-release, I
Yeah,
guess.
I my pre-release was awesome because I got War Leader's Call. I had like Incinerator
Oof.
of the Guilty. I had
Oh, come
the
on.
Bullheck Investigator. It was great. I had the Sweet Boros deck. It was awesome.
That
Went
card
3
seems
0.
mediocre compared to the other cards you've listed in your deck so far.
Yeah. I mean,
Like
that's why it was
Wojak
third.
Investigator. Was
Still
that
pretty
card
good.
like so 2/4 flyer that like draws you cards? Come on.
Yeah. It has vigilance too. It blocks those pesky little disguise creatures really easily.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say that this set is obviously we're in the portion of the set which is like aggressive two drops and aggro and like Boros is the best thing to
Yeah.
do because nobody knows how all the other decks work yet.
Classic.
Um, which is what we always talk about. Hey, start with Boros and then until you stop winning and then move on.
Yeah.
I have not been listening to my own advice and have been trying other things and losing
Well,
a
it's like
lot.
if your goal is depends what your goal is. If your goal is to just win, all you want to do is win, then you can pick up some value that way. But just play Boros and other people will still be figuring out how to build the different decks and what cards are good and what cards are like too slow. And so people will stumble, people will be playing cards that they won't be playing next week because they're
Hmm.
too bad. And so you do pick up some win rate that way. If your goal is to explore and like learn, and with the end goal of I'll be able to play a variety of different decks, well then maybe you got to experiment. I've always been a bit of a fan of like I'll figure out how the aggro decks work first, and then I'll let other people tell me how the other decks work.
Yeah, as you're
Um,
watching them start to beat you, and you're like, oh, that card.
right. When does there's always like a point where the aggro deck's win rate starts to fall and you can like
Hmm.
feel it
Yeah,
and
and you're
you're
like,
like,
it's
okay.
slowly slipping away from you. You're like, no.
And you're just so super commonly like putting them to 4 or whatever, but not
Hmm.
quite getting there. And you're like, okay, what are the cards that were stopping me? What was the turning point? So I've been playing some aggro. Uh, it's been going pretty well.
Yeah, yeah, it's been good. I correctly said that Dog Walker is going to be fucking busted, and it's true.
Love Dog Walker. Oh
Yeah,
my God, that card's so good.
listen to like when that card first came out. We talked about that like 3 weeks ago. Was it last week or maybe it was just last week? No,
Yeah.
was it before that? I can't remember how long ago it was. But as soon as I saw that card, I was like, this card is good.
Yeah.
Good
That's the
card.
house. And one thing I'll say is I've never seen anyone else do this, but I've been doing it pretty frequently. I just slam it on 2.
I have also slammed it on two, and I don't think I see anyone else do it.
Yeah, no one
Um,
else ever does it.
they'll like pass up. They won't play anything on 2 and then play a morph creature on 3 and then it turns out
That's
to
the
be
thing.
dog
And
walker.
then another morph creature the turn after, and I'm like, you'd much rather play Dog Walker on two, and then the if you have another morph or another disguise creature in your hand.
Yeah, the other thing people are doing that they shouldn't do is uh or that I don't think that they should do. There's probably a case for it, but you're like you're on turn 4, you played your dog walker on 3. You attack him with your dog walker as it's face down, and then when I go to block it, then you flip it up. I still think that you want to flip it up no matter what, and I'm
Yep.
probably gonna eat the first. Like I'll take the trade, so you should just flip it up and get the vigilance just in case. Um,
I
just
often main phase the flip on it.
yeah, I don't really see why you would.
I've had people attack me for two because I had no blocks
Mm,
like even available to me,
yeah,
and then flip on my end step. And I'm like, you missed a point.
you missed a
Like,
point, and an untapped creature.
right.
That's it has vigilance. I don't know why you would. Okay,
Yeah.
very
And like
strange.
maybe I did have one person flip it like it was tapped and they flipped it when I attacked them. So I think they didn't realize the dogs would be tapped.
Gotcha. Yeah,
So I was like, okay, that's
that's
a learning moment.
that's just a quick. Yeah, that's one of those learning moments. I have had a lot of those learning moments. Um,
Oh yeah.
so I would like to say that there is. I had a quite a horrific punt the other day. Um, but there is a card called Gearbane Orangutan. Um,
Yeah, love this guy.
yeah. So I will say that most of the time, when there are cards that look like this, on Arena, when they enter the battlefield, so I'll just read the card because we are new to the set, but it's
Right.
Gearbane Orangutan is 2 and a red for a 2/2 ape with reach. And when it enters the battlefield, you can choose to either destroy up to 1 target artifact or sacrifice an artifact. If you do, put 2+1/+1 counters on Gearbane Orangutan. This card, most of the time when you have cards that have modes like this, Arena will show you, and then if there's a mode you can't physically do, it'll like gray it out so that you can't
Hmm.
click on it. And what I'm saying is, if you play Gearbang Orangutan and you don't have an artifact to sack, it will just gray it out and you can't pick it.
Right.
However, that's not the case with this card. It will always give you the option to pick either one. If you have an artifact on the battlefield that you don't want to sacrifice, you have to pick the other one that says destroy up to 1 target artifact. You have to pick that and then say no. That's how the
Yeah.
card works.
Yeah. You mean if you want to just play this as like a gray ogre?
Yes, if you want to play this as a 3 mana 2/2, like your opponent has no artifacts to blow up, and you have an artifact you don't want to blow up, you have
Right.
to, because it
Gotcha.
won't just gray out the sacrifice one.
Hmm.
Or even sorry, if you have 0 artifacts, there's no artifacts on the battlefield, you can't just play it and it has no, there's no choices. It will always give you both choices. And the reason that I say this is because it's really confusing, because when you're given the choice, do you want to sacrifice an artifact? I check, I have no artifacts. I say sure, I'll sacrifice an artifact. Nothing to sacrifice, nothing happens, cool. I play it again, I do have an artifact. I didn't realize this creature was an artifact, but I do have one.
Right.
Sure, I'll sacrifice an artifact. There's nothing
And
to
you
sacrifice.
have to. Yeah.
Sacrifices my Krenko's Buzz Crusher. I'm sorry, what? I did not realize that was an artifact right away, and I was
Oof.
obviously not trying to sacrifice that card. And this card fucked me. I was so angry. Luckily, I was able to squeeze out a win in that game, but I was furious. I was
Yeah, that's
so
rattling.
furious. It just
I still
shouldn't,
love this monkey, but
but it just shouldn't. If you don't have an artifact, it shouldn't let you choose the artifact thing. I just
it
don't
should
know
be like you may sacrifice an artifact if you do.
why would it.
You should be able
Yeah,
to get out of it either way, just
why
for
do.
like arena convenience.
Yeah, why do I have to pick destroy up to 1 target artifact, and then it says, "Do you want to kill your Kranko's Buzz Crusher?" And you say, "No, I don't want to." Why would
Right.
that? Why would that be the way the card works? Why is this? This is so
It just
stupid.
is, Zach. It just is.
So don't get got
Um,
by that. It sucks. It sucks so much. If you don't want to blow anything up, always hit blow something up.
I've just like
That's
literally never cast this where I don't want to blow it, where I don't want either the two counters or
okay.
usually it's the opposite. Usually I'm like, they have a decent artifact. Do I just want the 4/4 reach though? Like, because I could sack my clue. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, yes, a three
Rather
mana.
than like, do I jam this for to do nothing? I haven't run into that scenario yet.
It was more so like I was just adding to the board. I was like, I'm gonna attack with this. I'm just playing
Right.
this
Yeah. Play
because
another tutor.
I'm gonna need a reach blocker. But like,
I
it
thought
was
that's what you're going to complain about, the sneaky reach on it.
no, no. I like the reach on it. I don't like the fact that it's fucked up templating, and I
So I
hate
had
it.
someone attack a Thopter into it, and I was like, cool, block.
Like, uh,
Good thing you're tapped out, or I'd be overthinking what this could be.
yeah. I have another horrible tilting complaint, and I'm just gonna go
Okay,
right
let's
into
hear
it
it.
because I'm
Let's
feeling the
hey,
rage right now. All
hey,
right,
your tilts are my learning, man.
yeah, so I there are a ton of fucking spells that say this cannot be countered, including by ward, right? There's like there's a ton. There's it's ridiculous. Um Black has two, red has two,
Yep.
blue has one, stuff like that. So most of the time when you see this happen, it's because people are playing the fantastic card Out Cold. This card, if someone passes the turn with 4 mana and one of them's blue, and you have two
Yeah.
creatures, they're going to play Out Cold. Um, it happens all the time. But when you tap 4 mana, Out Cold both of their disguised creatures, it'll like stop for a moment, but it won't put the thing up that says Ward 2. Do you pay the Ward 2? It doesn't do that. It just clicks straight through it and just says, yep, they're tapped and you're fine. It doesn't prompt you at all. So
Hmm.
I was under the impression that it, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but the thing with the gear being orangutan threw me off. And so then I played Long Goodbye, which is the black card that destroys a creature with mana value 3 or less
Oh, I see.
that says this
And
spell
you
can't be
paid for the
countered.
ward cap.
I paid for the ward because I was just trying to click through it because I didn't think it would pop up. Because when I play Out Cold, it doesn't pop up because I didn't have the mana for it. But when you do have the mana for it, it will pop up and you have to decline. But if you don't
Right.
have the mana for it, it won't pop up and it'll just go, which is crazy to me. I don't understand why that would be the way that it is. Like, why doesn't it just pop up Ward 2 decline because my lands are all tapped? Like, I'm tapped out. I can't pay 2. Why
Right.
doesn't it say, do you decline to play 2? I decline to pay 2.
And you have to.
Yeah. As opposed to, oh, we'll just shortcut it. But when you do have the 2, we'll see if you pay it or not. I think that is really annoying.
Yeah, that's how they've templated pretty much all costs on Arena. Like if you just cannot pay it, then it just doesn't even ask you.
Yeah,
Um, like with Mana Leak and stuff, that those types of cards work that way, right?
that's true.
Um, I've run into issues with it before where I was like, oh no,
Hmm.
like I didn't think that was going to be instantaneous. Um,
Yes.
so I could see that kind of thing
Hmm.
being a gotcha for me here as well. I can't like think of a specific instance, but basically this decision of templating, because I'm used to like especially earlier Magic Online always asked you and
Hmm.
you just couldn't click OK. OK was just like grayed out and then cancel or what however
Hmm.
this stupid wording on Magic Online was. But um like yeah, that's how it worked. The what you're suggesting is how it worked. So this change took a while getting used to, and I'm still not 100%. Like, I don't think it's that intuitive because a lot of the
It's not.
time I'm still expecting it to ask or put up a fight or something, and it just like things just go through faster than I'm
Yeah.
expecting it to. Because like the ward, I don't know, the ward is like something that goes on the stack that you can react to, right? So you're like
Yeah.
expecting that to happen sometimes, and then it just doesn't.
It just doesn't. Sometimes. Uh, while we're on the train of this thing, I will also say that the counter spell Reasonable Doubt, which is 1 in a blue for an instant, you counter a spell unless they pay 2, and then you suspect up to one target creature. Um,
Yeah.
if you do just be like, I don't know, and then click a ward creature when you don't have any mana, it will counter your spell. Um, so like I was playing a card They tried to
Yeah.
counter my spell with their last 2 mana. They decided to suspect my disguise creature, and then their counter spell was countered. And then I got to play my
Hmm.
card for free. Not for free, but like through the counter spell because they
Right. It,
tried to.
it has two targets and
There's two
one of them
targets, and one of
fizzled
them
now.
countered the spell for it.
Right.
So just be aware of that.
Yeah, that's weird.
It was really,
Don't do
really
that.
weird. Don't do that. Um, Obviously, it just
There's some
because
weird templating in this set, huh?
it is like, well, the thing with reasonable doubt is like it does say up to one, so like just don't don't target that one unless like it's the only creature on the battlefield. I guess you could still click 0, so you still have that ability,
But
but just
like
be
the way I'd think of it, this might get have gotten me because I'd be thinking of it as like, okay, if I cast reasonable doubt on your spell and I suspect your creature, then you sack that creature. My spell doesn't fizzle because I still
mhm,
have two targets and I just still have one legal target.
yeah.
So I might just auto think that's how it would work. Like if I forgot about ward, but because
Mhm.
of the way ward works, it
It
explicitly says
counters.
counter the spell
Mhm.
that is trying to do it. That would get countered. That would confuse me the first. I'd be like, "What?"
What?
And then I
Yeah,
would figure out what happened and I'd be mad at myself.
it
That's
was definitely
basically
one of
how
those
that would happen.
yeah, it was one of those situations where it happened and then my opponent just like basically conceded right afterwards because it was just like
Yeah, the old shame
what.
concede.
But it was also just like what the fuck just happened, and
Right.
it was just because it was just all of a sudden reasonable doubt was just in their graveyard, and I just my spell went through, and I'm like, I was like, that was like I was like spell checking them, like okay, do they have a counter spell or not? I don't know.
Right.
They had it, and then I still got to play the card. And I was like, oh
Right.
geez, that sucks. Um, so just be careful, I guess. Um, I don't even think that that was them forgetting that I had ward. I think that they were just got confused
They
with the
just
way that it
clicked
was.
something,
Yeah.
thought they had to target something,
Mhm.
whatever.
So be wary of that type of stuff, because there are a couple random weird things in the set like that that like
Yeah.
pop up.
And then there are
Um,
like some cards that do stuff on ETB or flip, and then some cards that only do it on ETB and stuff
yeah.
like that. And
So
we
I
talked about how they're ordered last time, but it's
yeah,
still
I can't remember if we talked about that on the show or off, but the templating of that is like if there's a disguised creature that does an ability, even if it doesn't flip up, it's above the disguise text. So if it enters the battlefield, or if it like just if it has a dies ability or anything like that, it'll be above the disguise cost or not cost. Well, yeah, the cost. Um, and then if it has a flip up ability, it'll be underneath. It's like, oh, this only does something if you flip it up, like Dog Walker. You can't play Dog
yeah.
Walker and get the dogs. You have to flip it up.
Yeah, I always think of like Dog Walker versus the
The
is it one?
the gadget technician
Gadget Technician. Yeah.
thing,
That
yeah, makes the
Gadget
Thopter
Technician has the text above and Dog Walker has the text below the
exactly.
disguise.
So when we say that, there is one exception that is important to know. There is
Of
a
course,
card,
that has to be.
of course. The card Offender at Large is the 4 and a red for the 5/4 giant rogue that has disguise for 5. Um, its text is below the disguise wording, but it does say when it enters the battlefield, up to one target creature gets +2/+0 until on turn. So it's
That's
the
great.
anomaly for some reason. This is the
For some
card.
reason, just this card, yeah.
It's just this one. It's a common. You'll see it a lot.
Got changed late in development or something, who knows?
Yeah, and they just like didn't change the where the disguise cost was, but it breaks the rule and it is the bane of my existence. It's actually good. I actually like this card, but because of that templating, it pisses me off and I don't like it anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say I hate this card.
This is definitely the card on the list of like, all right, well, if they attack, I think I can beat everything except for Offender at Large. And
Right.
then it's Offender at Large. You're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. Ah, of course it
Um,
is. Did they
yeah,
hear me?
yeah, that's usually what happens. I'm like, I think that that's what it is. Um, but yeah, anyway, I just want to go through some quick weird gripes from the set that are like things that are a part of it that like I have randomly found out or like lost to or something that's pissed me off.
Yeah, that's
Um,
been super helpful. Now I don't have to lose to those things.
there you go.
Your pain
Um,
is my gain.
yeah. Two other cool things, actually. Sorry, I feel like I'm going on a rant. Um,
You're talking about the limited format, I assume. No, say what you're going to say, and I'll tell you if it was
literally
a
just,
rant or not.
no, literally just the limited format. Um,
Like that's what we're here to talk about.
so obviously there's a bunch of like green fixing and things like that. Um, but specifically Flourishing Bloomkin and the Nervous Gardener, those are both disguised creatures that get lands when they get flipped up. Um,
Yeah.
they both say forest cards. Um, so, or sorry, one says forest cards, the Nourishing Bloomkin, and the Nervous Gardener says a land with a basic land type. So you get your fixing lands with those. So
Nice.
they're common, or one of them's common, one of them's uncommon, but they do help you fix yourself pretty well. It
Assuming
actually
you have like the green X dual land.
well the Nervous Gardener gets any of them because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
have a
But
basic land type, which is awesome and actually super helpful, especially when those lands are all over the place. So if it's more reasonable to do some weird splashy stuff than I thought, and I have been running into a lot more three color decks than I was anticipating. Um, I don't know
yeah,
if
I
you've seen
have
this.
two, but I've seen a lot of just really sketchy splashes. Like
Gotcha.
I chucked a couple of planes in my friggin' Demir deck, which is like,
Yeah.
I don't think you should have done that to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what you splashed because I didn't see it, but
Yeah.
two planes, really?
I know. I had a five color deck, but I was running like two Topiary Panthers, two Buried in the Gardens, like a bunch of stuff. And we were actually playing it's actually like actually no, maybe that wasn't that deck, but we were playing the shattered the Case of the Shattered Pact, which is like the colorless one that gets you a basic land. But then if you
Oh,
have
sure.
permanents that are all five colors, then you have a case that at the beginning of your upkeep, target creature gets flying and double strike and vigilance until end turn. Um, so that was like it's not amazing, but you can do it fairly easy with all the common like disguise creatures because they're all two colors. Um, and then just giving one of those flying double strike and vigilance is good, but I don't know if it's worth doing the whole
It
five color thing.
doesn't sound like it is,
But it
but
was fun.
yeah,
We did not do super well, but I did feel good that we're like, hey, we actually it was a functional deck. It was pretty. It like we always had our colors,
that's good.
so that's good. This could be one of the reasons why we've been losing a lot, but we did have fun in that one.
Yeah. I've not been doing any of that. I've played, so I've done three drafts and I did Boros, and Azorius,
Hmm.
detectives. And
Those
I
are
did one sealed event where I went green blue because that's kind of what my pool had, and I had Vanifar and stuff. So
hmm. Oh shit, Vanifar's
um,
good.
Vanifar was good, yeah. Um, but man, like I will say the fact that there are more rares than usual
Hmm.
has been apparent.
Hmm.
And the rares in this set are good.
Hmm.
Like I I had to play against a person who um they had like of course turn three, just like right on cue. They just drop War Leader's Call. And I was like,
Jeez.
come on, man. Like on turn three on the play after playing a two drop and like you bash me for
I did
four or
that.
whatever.
I did that in the pre-release a lot.
And then I'm like starting to stabilize. I'm like, I have to trade.
Hmm.
You have to be like super efficient with everything I do because all their creatures are bigger. And then I'm like, okay, I think we're okay. We both have a decent board. Don't think anyone's advantaged. And they drop another War Leader's Call. And I'm just like,
Holy
you,
shit.
man.
Then
Like,
they play Dog Walker, flip it up.
yeah, the flip over their dog
Nug you for
walker. Just
six.
like, yeah, just like, come on, man. Double War Leader's Call. And then I think they literally played like five different rares and mythics in that game, two of which
Yeah,
were War Leader's Call, and I was just like, okay, but like, come on.
yeah, yeah. It's it's pretty busted. Um, the best deck we had that we actually didn't get a trophy with, which I was kind of mad about, but we had Axebane Ferox, which is like the 4 mana 4/4 Death Touch hasty guy. Um, we had Ansrag, the Quake Mole, the
Yeah,
Gruul
I
huge dude. We had
lost a game to that guy once.
Yaris, Roar of the Old Gods, which is like so awesome. And
Yeah, giving your creatures haste is
we
nuts.
had Incinerator of the Guilty too. It was nuts.
Okay.
It was
Which has haste thanks to your Yaris.
yeah. I also played like I've been seeing Yaris all over the place. Which if you don't know, Yaris is like it's 2 red green for a 4/4 that gives all your creatures haste, and then all your face down creatures, whenever you deal damage with one of them, you get to draw a card. And then if the biggest thing is if your face down creatures die, they come back face down and then flip up. And so then basically you're like wrath proof,
Hmm.
and he's busted. Like
Card's nuts. I haven't played against it yet, but just reading it, I'm like,
I played against
how do you beat
somebody,
this?
I had my own, and then they had two. And it was like, what the fuck? Um, yeah,
Yeah.
he's really awesome. And he's also really fun. Um, but I will say that like I don't think you just have him and immediately win. He is just like a 4 mana 4/4 kind of just like there.
And he
Because
makes you
most
kind of not want to flip your
well
face down creatures.
he makes it so you just want to attack with your 2/2s until they block, and then you get to make them big.
Exactly. Like you never want to flip them
Yeah, you never want to pay for them.
because you want to draw the cards if they deal
Mhm.
damage, and if they die, then you
Exactly.
get the free flip. So you just like attack with impunity with all of your tutus.
He also seems to be the only card that we're interested in expose the culprit. So the expose the culprit's like the red instant that like either you can flip a card face up or you can flip any number of disguised creatures face down and mix them up or
Yeah,
whatever. Um,
right.
Yaris is a
That's
great way where
nutty
it's
combo.
yeah, where you're just like if they happen to have one of the board wipes, it is board wipe protection, and I fucked it up when I had him. I literally had the board wipe protection in my hand. I was like, I'll just do this for value. And then next turn they like no witness wipe my whole board. I'm like, I literally had the card that would have saved almost all my creatures, and I just threw it away because I didn't play around a
Bummer.
board wipe. Because why would I play around a board wipe in limited? I'm just like, I guess I
Yeah, I've
should.
just been avoiding expose the culprit on the assumption that it's awful, but I
I
mean,
well, if I have Yaris, I'll take one
yeah,
and see what it does. Like I don't really I it's still been kind of like I my assumption is this card is really bad and paying a whole card to flip up a creature is not worth it, and that's what most people use it for. So you shouldn't take it unless you have Yaris or something where like you have other shenanigans you can do. Um
yeah,
it also kind of works as like a if they try to remove one of your creatures, you get to exile it and it comes back face down. So that it does blank a removal spell. It's like a counter for removal, but um,
right.
then you have to try to flip it up again and blah 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 blah. So I don't know. It seems pretty, but I like that it has some application.
I was gonna say like you could flip something in response to a spell to give it ward and counter that spell, but I'm like, I guess this just counters it anyways
It just
because
counters it because it
it'll
exiles it
lose
and
its
brings it.
target.
Yep. Which is better.
Yeah.
Uh, All right, Jeff. We've gone on some tangent. I've ripped into some things I don't like, which doesn't happen very often on the podcast. So,
I'm having fun though with the limited format, but
oh, me
it's
too.
definitely bomb-tastic, man. Like every game, although my trophy, which was 7-0,
Hmm.
not just a ordinary trophy, I'm not sure I had any rares in it. It was just like low curve, go wide Boros deck
Yeah, you
with
play
a lot of like uncommons, to be
mhm,
fair.
the unicorn.
But I didn't even
The
have the unicorn actually.
unicorn's so good.
All my two drops were dog walkers, but
I
no, I had
mean,
a ton of two drops. Um,
Yeah, dog
But I was
walkers.
mostly winning with like the uncommon dog that gives all your team +1/+1 whenever you
Karlov
attack. And
Watchdog. That card's
yeah,
so good.
the thing was pretty busted.
Hmm.
And then I had two copies of the, let's see if I can find it here, Fuss and Bother.
Yeah,
And
okay.
so
You get to put counters on
that was my
everybody.
way of like, yeah, of taking advantage of the going wide. Um, yeah, the dog and then the Fuss and Bother.
Also, the Karlov Watchdog just makes you feel safe attacking because they can't flip up any other creatures. And that's like the
Yeah.
number one combat trick is like attacking into disguised creatures. And you're like, I don't have to worry about that anymore. My
Yeah, I
tutus
didn't even like
trade with your
know.
tutus.
I'm looking at the deck now. Okay, I had a 10th district hero. So unfortunately I did not
Oh,
achieve the
wow. The like one of the best cards.
it never factored in. I never activated it. It was like a 2/2 for two that both times that I
Okay.
played it. But
It's a 2/3 for two.
okay,
So
whatever. Sorry. That is a
that's
meaningful
huge. It's
difference.
a
Yeah.
huge difference.
But what I'm saying is like I barely ever drew
Yeah,
it.
yeah. You weren't just like
Uh,
turning your creatures indestructible and like winning the game.
no, I definitely never activated it,
Hmm.
and I never had it on turn two. And like I had it a few times in the late game where basically any body would have been fine.
Hmm.
So that was unfortunate, but okay, that was my one rare.
Sure.
Um, but I had a ton of really powerful uncommons, so
Hmm.
it feels like a bit like the old language of Prince or Pauper format. This one feels like a Prince format to me.
Princey Prince format.
But the number of times I've had to play against fucking Rakdos, I'm just like, what card's gonna can get them out of this, you know? And then they're like 6/6 flying demon. You could sacrifice two things, and if you don't, I draw two cards, and I'm like,
That's
fuck you.
that's so funny because I haven't seen Rakdos at all, and most of the Rakdos decks are all like low the ground stuff. That's like just like repeat offender, and like that's what they're doing. The decks that I've played against that felt like, oh god, what am I even supposed to do? Are all the Izzet decks like
Huh.
they're
I don't know
playing?
if I've played against it.
It's like all artifact shenanigans. They play like the Izzet Gear Drake, and they have the Detective Satchel. So like Gear Drake, like it's a 2 drop that's like a it brings a clue with it, and every time you sacrifice an artifact, it gets +1/+1 counter. And then the
Classic.
Detective Satchel is a 4 drop that investigates twice when it enters, and then
Hmm.
you can tap it to make a Thopter as long as you sacrifice an artifact that turn. And so that you're constantly just making more clues and drawing cards and then making Thopters, and like you have chump blockers for days, but you're attacking in the air with the big gear drakes, and it just always felt like, oh god, there's just a million like flies all over the place. And I'm just like, I can't fucking deal with this. And I'm constantly trying to like my main focus is like, okay, just flip my guy so I can blow up the stupid satchel, but they already have too much stuff already. And I end up
Yep.
dying just because they have like one flyer that I can't get rid of at the end of everything. It's just like, okay, great. So
Yeah, I remember that satchel now actually because my opponent played crime novelist into that satchel. And at first they played crime novelist, and I was like, eh, all right, I think I could beat that. And they played the satchel, and I was like, okay, now I have to kill the crime novelist.
mm-hmm,
So I did because I had galvanize, I think.
mm-hmm.
I decided not to kill it the turn before, but this turn I was like, well, now I'm killing it. And then they played another crime novelist, and I proceeded to like lose very quickly.
Yeah.
It's just like that thing got huge. It was making them so much additional mana. And I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, lesson learned.
Yes.
There are shells where crime novelist is silly.
Yes. Um, and so that specifically, as well as there's a couple other things, but like you were saying that it's a Prince set, though I do agree that like I have seen a ton of decks where the synergies were banging. Like
Hmm.
things were popping off for them. And like enough so we're even like Tunnel Tipster, the 2 mana 1/1 that like ramps you, but every time you play a disguised creature, it gets a +1/+1 counter. You end up getting in situations where it's like, well, that's even if that's just like a 3/3 or a 4/4, you're like, I have to use a stupid card on this mana dork.
Yeah,
Like
that
this is
card's
so
good.
annoying. And so like all those things being able to line up nice plays or um the timing of different things, realizing like playing good like disguise creatures early that I actually want to flip is a big plus, which is like the opposite of Cons of Tarkir. Cons was
Right.
like you want to play the one that you just don't care about and want to trade off with. This is like no, actually it has a really cheap flip cost and I want to play it first. Don't
Yeah.
play your 5 cost flip card face down, because like
Yeah, agreed.
you don't want to trade off because it's going to be really good later. It's actually a good card. You want to be able to flip your other ones or trade off your cheaper ones.
Yeah.
Um,
I love turn 4 of like play a 2-drop, flip my dog walker,
yeah,
attack.
huge.
That's what I'm in for.
Yeah, it also makes you see that like another thing with like Concept Dark Gear is the Cluefish red herring.
Oh
That
yeah.
card is
I like
actually
that card.
it's really good. Like
You mean Valley Dasher 2.0?
yeah, it's so Valley Dasher was like some people kind of liked it, but it was a fairly terrible card
Is
in Concept Dark
pretty
Gear.
universally accepted that it
um,
sucked.
which is I have seen some people, some pros on Twitter defend Valley Dasher, so that's the reason I just got a little caveat. Some people like it.
I think it
Um,
got better in the other two formats. Like when you added
oh,
the
gotcha.
yeah,
Fate Reforged and Dragons of Trigger.
those got a
That
lot faster.
that makes sense. Um, but Valley Dasher is the same as Red Herring, except for Red Herring has the extra clause of obviously it's a clue, so you get to pay 2 and sacrifice it to draw a card. So the fact that you just get to bash them, either trade off with their disguise creature, which is great, or when it gets outclassed by a 3/3, you literally just get to sacrifice it to draw
Just
a
trade
card.
it in. Yeah.
Amazing. You can also just sacrifice it with like the orangutan, and then you get a 4/4 orangutan or a bunch of things like that. So
Not too bad.
not too bad.
I still don't think it's like amazing, but
No, I'm not picking it super
it's
early,
totally fun.
but I'm playing it as opposed to
Yeah,
passing it forever and then keep taking.
agreed.
Like Valley Dasher, you'd get like as a
Yeah,
push, and then you'd put it in your sideboard, even though you're
right.
red. You know what I mean?
Direct to sideboard card.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the kind of that's why red herring to me is just like just just way better. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
god, I was thinking that this was going to be just abysmal, and now it's like, oh, my opponent plays a red herring. I'm like, that's annoying. I don't like
Mhm.
it. It's not going to do it. It's going to probably do about 6 damage, which is really
That's what I was
weird.
gonna say. It's gonna do 6 damage and then draw a card.
Yeah, which is pretty good for like 4 mana.
Yeah, I've started just like trading with them.
Yeah,
It's
just
like
trade.
whatever. Block. Fuck.
Trade when they don't have the mana, or trade when they are like if it's like turn 3 and they're like, okay, do I want to pay the 2 mana to draw the card back, or would I rather just trade off and
Yeah,
then play a
make it
disguise
awkward for
creature?
them.
Yeah, that's better than trading off when they have a mana efficient turn. Make it really awkward for them. Turn
Yeah,
3, trade as soon as possible.
yeah,
Sweet. Well, Jeff, we've talked about some random shit. We still have to talk about our worth slots. It's
yeah.
crazy.
We'll have to go somewhat faster than we usually do
I
for
know.
these.
I'm running out of beer. This is terrible.
Same.
Um,
It's a total disaster.
what's happening? All right, Jeff. Let's go to our worth of slots. I think I started last time. I don't have a toonie with me, so we'll just say that you get to go first. How
Okay.
about that? Does that sound
All
okay?
right. I guess.
Oh, also, sorry. Before we get into this, Jeff, can you tell us what worth of slots are?
Yeah, so worth a slot is when we choose cards from the set that we think are worth a slot in your deck.
Hmm.
So we break it up. We have first our layup. This is something that you can almost certainly expect to run into or maybe even play yourself. It's definitely worth it to spend wild cards on these cards, and you're taking on very little risk by doing so.
Hmm.
Three-pointer is a little less sure. We think this could be good if the circumstances are line up correctly for it. It's powerful cards, but sometimes these things don't get there because the metagame isn't right for them. Half court, this is just basically stuff we wish was good but isn't.
Hmm.
But sometimes they get there. And then we have overrated cards and underrated cards, which I think speak for themselves. All
Absolutely.
right. So
Start us
for my
off.
layup, I had a few different choices for this, I think, but I just went with the card that I just since it was spoiled, and we've already talked about it a few
Hmm.
times, but since it was spoiled, I've been like, that's a card, man. And that card is War Leader's Call. I'm just gonna put this in there. I have a hard time imagining that this doesn't show up at all
Hmm.
in standard. There was already a pretty decent Boros deck, like tier two,
Hmm.
and it's gotten a lot of help in this set. And this is like the biggest one because the whole point of that deck was to go wide. And so I haven't played a ton of standard, but I suspect if I jump into standard queues, I'll be playing against some Boros go wide decks that play that like top out with this card essentially.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, War Leader's Call is just an absolute house. It's white red for an enchantment that gives +1/+1, and whenever a creature ETBs, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Um, just really good.
Yeah,
Just
it's
yeah,
two
man,
great
like
cards.
Glorious Anthem's come a long way.
It really has. It's fantastic. I cannot agree with you more. This is one of the ones that I was looking at as well. Um, you will definitely see this around. Definitely a great layup. Nice.
Great and
Um,
limited, so you don't even have to worry about rare drafting.
yeah, this is just like an awesome card to have. Um, Sweet, sick. I don't really see a world where that isn't being played a lot.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Um,
It's great.
my layup, I had the same types of things. You know, it gets really difficult. We didn't really talk about this. We were going to talk about this, but then we got distracted. With 3 year
Classic.
standard, it can be really difficult now to know cards like, all right, this is definitely going to be played, and you can feel super confident about. All the other things of like, oh, you might be able to play it. This could be cool. That kind of feels similar, but cards that you're like, you're definitely going to see this card, it's hard to pin down.
Mhm.
So my layup is boring, um, but you're gonna see this card, and it's gonna people are gonna try doing this, and I think they're just gonna this is gonna be more
Yeah,
of the
it's
thing you
Dog
want to do.
Walker.
It's it's definitely not Dog Walker. No, I think people are gonna be playing No More Lies a bunch. Like you're gonna see
Mhm.
this. It's obviously it's just an uncommon, but like this is a great
It's
counter
a
spell.
nuts card.
Yeah,
Ridiculous
it's
card.
it's just white and blue for an instant counter target spell unless its controller pays 3 colorless mana. And if the spell was countered this way, exile it instead of putting it to its owner's graveyard. Just the existence of this card makes it really difficult. People have, I know I've heard talks of like, is Make Disappear still better because Make Disappear can be 4 mana, but it's always 2 until you sacrifice a creature. A lot of these types of control decks already have a bunch of tokens that they can sacrifice for it anyways, blah, 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 blah. The fact that you can have both No More Lies and this also is just like your opponent never knows how to play around it now. It's like
Yeah.
I can play around Make Disappear and go for 2, and they're always going to have No More Lies. Or like maybe you play against a different opponent. Maybe you play against one opponent that has No More Lies. You play against another opponent that has Make Disappear. You're just kind of screwed. So like it starts to make
Yeah.
your opponent have a really difficult time to just play around cards because there's so many different things now. It's just like, well, now I can play 3 mana off curve. That fucking sucks. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's the safest bet. And then they're going to have Make Disappear, sacrifice a creature. You're just like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. It's much easier to play against counter magic when there's only one good one,
Yeah.
because then you only have to worry about one card. When there's a variety of counter spells that have different strengths and weaknesses, it gets very difficult to play around
Yeah.
it.
Because before it's like if your opponent doesn't have a creature, you can easily know, oh, I just leave up 2. But now if they don't
Yeah.
have a creature, you're like, well, they could have
Could
No
be
More Lives
three.
though. So
And I think, people asking about whether make disappear is better. It's like, I mean, you can't ignore the exile clause here. Like
you can.
that's really powerful
Mm-hmm.
in a world where using your graveyard is something everyone is interested in. Um, I don't know, my it's more about casting cost for me. I think if you can cast No More Lies as reliably or near as reliably as you can cast Make Despair, then you want No More Lies.
Yeah. Also, like 3 year standard, we have great mana. Of course, it'll be fun.
Yeah, but you're probably right. It's probably you play a 3-2 split or something.
Something like that. Um, I think that's probably the safest bet, and it's also just like really confusing for your opponent to deal with.
Yeah, right. Just especially, if you're ever in an open decklist tournament, then you want to play some of each
Yeah,
just because you don't want your opponent to know they only have one thing to play around.
yeah. Ugh. Um, yeah. Well, Jeff, let's go to three pointers.
Okay,
Um, we're gonna snake draft this, so I can go next. Um,
snake it.
so for three pointers, I had two locked and loaded for a long time. However, we've talked about these cards and they really just go into one deck. So I felt like, you know what? Let's talk about something else that could be a little bit more interesting. And after playing against this card, specifically against this card, not that even it's even like that busted, but it's just annoying as fuck. Just like the fucking character that it shows. My three
Oh,
pointer is Kellen, Inquisitive Prodigy.
okay. Nice.
So I'm picking a Simic card, but it's annoying. So it's two green blue for a legendary human fairy detective. It has adventure, so I'll read the adventure first. It says tail the suspect, which is green and blue for a sorcery. Investigate. You may play an additional land this turn. Just normal Simic bullshit. And
This
then you
is
can
like heavily nerfed growth spiral.
yes. Yeah, basically. Um, sorcery speed, and you don't draw a card.
Yeah.
Um, then you can play Kellen, who is a 3/4 with flying and vigilance. It costs 4 mana total. And when Kellen attacks, destroy up to one target artifact. If you controlled the permanent, you draw a card. So the joke is that on two, you play Tail the Suspect, you make a clue, and then you get to play an additional land. So you have 3 lands. On turn three, you have 4 lands. You get to play Kellen, and then on turn five, you attack. You blow up the clue you made before. You draw a card. Um, in draft, I have the specific distaste for this card as it's played. I've played against it twice, and it was just abysmal. And I used everything I could to get rid of it, and it
I
ruined
mean,
me.
this is a house in draft.
It's definitely a house and draft, but I also think in constructed it could do something. Currently, we
Hmm.
don't really have a green blue deck, so that's why it's like not a shoe in. But a lot of the adventure cards that we got from Throne of Eldraine specifically tried to make sure you couldn't play one side into the other side. And
Right.
this specifically is making sure that you can, even though it looks like you can't. Like you do have to have the land in your hand on like you have to have a 3 land 4 spell hand at least
Right.
for this to work. But
Right.
when it
Investigate is much worse, is a big downgrade versus draw a card on Growth Spiral in particular, because a lot of the times Growth Spiral is used to try to hit the extra land.
exactly just to find it, so the
Yeah.
fact that you don't have you don't get the chance to investigate, crack the clue, and then get the other land. So basically, this deck would want to play more lands just to make sure you always hit it. But I don't know, a 3/4 flying vigilance that like blows up your opponent's artifacts if they have any troublesome things. If you blow up your own, you're probably playing a bunch of like creatures. We were talking about this before, but you could play Spyglass Siren in this just because you're making map tokens, things that make map tokens, and be able to blow things up. Um, so just drawing things for free or blowing up your opponent's stuff. I don't know. I can see him doing some work. We just don't really have a home for him, and the mana is a little weird. Though I think in this deck, you don't play a 1 drop, you play a tap land, and then he's your 2 drop. Um,
Yeah.
but
It's,
yeah,
yeah, definitely seems possible. This could be a card that I'm like, oh, fucking kill it, in a few
exactly.
months.
Yeah,
Um,
he was definitely not even close to on my radar. It was even to the point where I was like, this guy sucks. I don't really care at all. And then I played against him. I was like, I hate this. Stupid.
yeah.
He also doesn't tap so that Wandering Emperor doesn't eat him.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Mhm.
All right. For mine, I just had to, I was bouncing around for a few 3 pointers, and you know what? I gotta go with a classic here. I'm gonna talk aristocrats for a second,
Okay.
and I'm gonna nominate Fane Ripper. So
Oh.
I love this card. I talked about it a little bit, a few weeks ago in our first spoilers discussion. But this is 3 black, black, black for a 6/5 flying with ward. Sacrifice a creature. Whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. I had the honor of getting my ass kicked by this card in limited, so this card's not remotely beatable in limited. But I think like this is what you want when you pay 6 mana. Like I get something that's resilient. It's hard to get off the battlefield, and and it's hard to get off the battlefield without at least taking like a huge life swing, like a four,
At least,
8 point life swing, and
at
like
least.
because this when this dies, it triggers itself. So, and I'm just imagining there's a deck that exists out there with Bartolome in this, where it literally just wins the game on the spot. So
Hmm.
at 6 mana, you win the game most of the time, and the fail scenarios are still pretty good. Like, I don't know, this could get there. This could be the reason. And there's a couple other aristocrats cards in the set of a more like black-white variety that
Hmm.
push towards that more Bartolome build. So there could be something here. Now, again, it's hard for new decks to crack the 3-year standard metagame.
Hmm.
So it's why it's 3 pointers, because like it requires the deck that it's asking you to play to go in. Like, I think there is a world where people are jamming this in black-based mid-range decks as one of, or as a sideboard option against certain strategies. But I'm really talking about it as like the deck is what this is telling you to do, the
Hmm.
sacrifice deck. Um, I'm less interested if like Golgari decks just throw one of these in at the
Yeah,
top.
that's not fun.
I
No,
mean, it's fine, but it's like it's not what I'm hoping for here, you know?
exactly. Yeah, no, this card's sick. A friend of ours had one of these at the pre-release with a couple other choice legendary black cards. It was pretty rough. But
Nice.
no, Vein Ripper is awesome. For all the things you said, I hope that there is a deck of some kind. Um, so black, black, black. Good mana. It could be done. Could be done.
Yes, it is. It's not that uncastable, you know?
Definitely not. No, definitely not. You do not have to be mono black for this card to be relevant.
That's right. All right, and so then we had to choose a half court shot.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of options for this too, because I would say while we were talking about the super bomb heavy stuff, this set feels maybe slightly less impactful for constructed. Again, it's just so weird getting used to the 3-year
It's really
standard
strange.
thing.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of like cool rares that you can choose
Hmm.
that do fun things. I decided in a testament to something in honor of something I've played in Explorer. Um, I wanted to select Niv Mizzet Guild Pact. So this costs Wooburg for a 6/6 flying hexproof for
Hmm.
a multicolored. And when it deals combat damage to a player, it deals X damage to any target. Target player draws X cards, and you gain X life, where X is the number of different pairs among permanents you control that are exactly 2 colors. Niv Mizzet Reborn, this is not. Um, but I've just loved this Niv Mizzet theme of like like Ravnican pairs being cool. I like that Niv Mizzet is the Guild Pact now, and they have a card about it.
Hmm.
Um, I think this just isn't good enough, but it's a neat design. I like it.
Hmm.
So.
Nice. Yeah, I have some things I was gonna say about this a little bit later in the episode, but
Oh,
nice.
interesting. Is it overrated somehow? Do people think it doesn't suck? To be fair,
No.
I think it sucks.
No, it's yeah, the this I think it's nice to have another one for sure. Like I agree with that. It doesn't do the same impact when you cast it as the
No, it
the
does
one that
nothing
you're
when you
you're
cancel.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it has hexproof from
That was a bummer. When I first read it as hexproof, I was just like, oh shit, now we talking.
The
Yeah.
fact that it has hexproof and multicolored and not monocolored is really confusing to me. Where it's like you're the guild pack, like you're very close to all of it.
It should have hexproof from monocolored and hexproof from three or more colors.
Yeah. So like yeah, basically you can only hit it with guild spells. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Um being like I beat the mirror of this is strange.
Unless like the
Um
guild pact is supposed to be someone who can't be harmed by the guilds, so their
I
word
guess
is
so.
final or
I guess that
something.
kind of makes sense. That I mean, that's true. Yeah, that's probably what the idea was. I think it's just hard that like you need permanence, right, of different colored pairs for this to do something.
Yeah, oh yeah, this card's real bad.
Where
But
the other cards let you like take counter spells and you got
you
other
like
removal
yeah, you like
spells and
draw 10 cards. Yeah.
and that was like sick. I have all these things. This one's like you have to play permanence um,
Right.
to draw cards. So when you're behind, it's like really rough. Um,
Oh, there's gonna be a 5 color Nimbus attack, don't you worry.
oh, for sure. In Brawl, probably.
Yeah. No, in Explorer, it doesn't play this card.
Definitely. Well, you definitely went on a great limb um, for the half court shot. I like really like. There's a huge heart of me
Still
that
feel
like.
bad about picking Atraxa that one time, so I gotta I gotta overcorrect the other
All
way.
right, all right. Like I really wanted to pick Yaris for this, but I just know Yaris is so awful in the meta that there's just zero chance. Because
Yeah,
the best thing that Yaris can do is like save you from board wipes, and the board wipes exile, so it doesn't do anything. So then
right.
this card becomes extremely irrelevant in 3-year standard and is useless. Um,
Best thing it does is give haste to stuff.
yeah, but not itself. So it's a 4 mana 4
Right.
4 do nothing, and
So
then
annoying that it doesn't do it itself.
yeah. So that card was immediately out. But if we were in 2-year standard, I would have picked Yaris for sure.
Nice.
Um, because we're not, I'm picking a card that's actually after this kind of discussion feels a little bit closer to a 3 pointer, but I'm still going to talk about it um,
All
because it
right.
has feels of the Yaris. It's really not. It's completely different. But Cryptic Coat. Uh,
Oh, okay.
so
Limited All-Star.
Yeah, so 2 and a blue for an artifact equipment at rare. It says when Cryptic Coat enters the battlefield, you cloak the top card of your library, then attach Cryptic Coat to it. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and can't be blocked. And then you can pay 1 and a blue to return Cryptic Coat to its owner's hand. So this card seems interesting in the sense that you get a 3 mana 3/2 can't be blocked
Right.
ward 2. Like that's what the card is on its face.
Yeah.
Um, the creature can get exiled, and Cryptic Coat stays around. You can bounce it to your hand and play it again, and keep doing that. Um, Cryptic Coat is also an artifact, so if you're playing I want to play a deck with this, and you're playing all my favorite cards like Zoetic Glyph.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can either
Mm-hmm.
hit your other artifacts, or you can end up hitting the Cryptic Coat. If they try to kill it, you can bounce it to your hand. You still get the Discover off of your Zoetic Glyph. Um, Anything that wants to have like Ward 2 on stuff, you probably. Now, granted, I just named 2 cards that are not creatures, and Cryptic Coat specifically wants you to have creatures in your deck. So hopefully you can hit them and you can
And
just like
hit them and
flip.
flip them.
So the other thing you could do is try to play like maybe a white blue deck where you have a bunch of creatures and you play assemble the players, and then you can see the top of your deck the whole time, so you can decide whether, oh, do I want to crypticoat this, or maybe you crypticoat all your lands, and so you remove the card off the top of your deck so you can play more of your 2 drops.
Right.
um there's some things that could happen with this card. I don't know if they're powerful enough is the thing.
Yeah.
um
I like
Obviously,
it for
like
sure.
a three
But you,
power, like you get to attack through everybody, and it's resilient enough, though we do live in
yeah,
a world of a raid. So um I don't know if it will be good enough, but I think it's really interesting and fun. um and the fact that you're cloaking something basically at random, There are some cards you could play in standard. I think there's that remember that like in Kamigawa there was that like chip thing that lets you look at the top of
Yes.
your deck.
Yeah, yeah,
So you could use that, but then I keep naming like non-creature
yeah.
spells.
Right.
So like or maybe we just
No,
don't want.
I think what you want to do is you want to load your deck with like big creatures like Atraxa,
Mhm.
and then you play this, and then you play that red spell that flips them. Don't even get the ETB from Atraxa.
No, no,
It's
no.
not what we're doing it for.
No, you need what no, what you really need is
Expose the culprit.
you're playing Cryptic Coat and the Tyrannosaurus thing,
There it is.
the one that does toxic.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you
yeah.
attack
That's
them, they
it.
can't block. You flip it, you hit them for 8 and then 4 toxic, and you
Yeah.
use expose the culprit to do it. And so
Yep. That's the combo deck.
it's an is it deck that splashes green cards that you never cast that you have to put
That
on the top of
splashes
your
like quadruple green or whatever that thing
you
is.
have to put it on the top of your deck somehow.
Yeah.
That's
No,
it.
no,
Just
you
like
just keep like playing Cryptic Code until you hit that card.
perfect. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
do it again. Do it again. Do it again. Oh man. But
Nope, didn't hit the dinosaur. Nope,
yeah.
didn't hit the dinosaur. Nope. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
You're
there we go.
screwed now.
But but yeah, so that deck probably doesn't want to play any instants and sorceries really. You mainly want to play creatures that do stuff that don't ETB. So
Mhm.
maybe we are interested in like actually no, we're not interested in the doorkeeper throw because this is an artifact that ETBs, so never mind. Um
I like it though. It's some sort of tempo deck,
yeah,
Just the 3/2 unblockable ward too. Like
I think
maybe
that's
that's just what we're doing
I think that's literally what we're doing. We're not even trying to like flip it up. You
with
literally just
some
never
random upside occasionally when you hit a creature.
just like a repeatable unblockable creature essentially.
Yeah.
Like it costs 5, but doing it in installments, that's not so bad. You always have it always looks like you're holding up either put coat back in your hand or counterspell. I don't hate it. It's not it's I don't
Yeah.
know if it's going to be uh like I just said, powerful enough. So we'll find out. Maybe we'll find out.
That's what the half court shots are for.
Yes. Let's go to our overrated cards, Jeff.
Cool.
All right. So I was going to talk about Niv Mizzet Guild Pack or
Yeah.
that card.
Do people like this card?
I think people do,
Oh, okay.
and I've been just like people. It seemed like people were freaking out about this card when it was like first previewed. They were excited about it, and it just looked like a hard to cast 5 mana 6/6 that doesn't do anything.
Hmm.
Um, but you know what? Instead of that, I'm going to talk about a different card that people also like. They know it's not good though, so I don't know if it's more overrated or not. But this is more my tangent on should we make these cards anymore? I think we should probably stop. Um, and so I don't know if I'm taking the fun out of this or I'm just being a wet blanket or whatever. But Slime Against Humanity, I'm over it, man. The joke's done, you know? I,
Yeah.
so I don't know how you feel about this card, but Slime Against Humanity is 2 and a green for a sorcery. You create a 0/0 green ooze creature token with trample, and you put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is 2 plus the total number of cards that you own in exile and in your graveyard that are oozes or are named Slime Against Humanity. And then a deck can have any number of Slime Against
Yeah,
Humanities in
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So we've seen cards that have that text. A deck can have any number of blah 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 blah. The first card was Relentless Rats. That was really cool because it was the first one and it got
Right.
bigger for all the rats that you had in play. Nice. Throughout history, they've added more and more and more. And they every once in a while try to do this and add another one. I think the most recent one was like, was it Persistent Petitioners or was there another one after that? I can't remember.
I think there
Um,
was one between those two.
so this card is kind of a trap. Like,
Wasn't there another rat one in like relatively recently?
yeah, in Dominaria, there's another one.
Yeah,
It was Rat Colony, um,
right.
which I fell into this trap. I thought this was really exciting. I was like, sweet, I'll build a Rat Colony deck. Awesome. They all get +1/+0 for each other Rat Colony I have. I can have as many as I want. I just play a bunch
It's
of Rat
so bad.
Colonies. And it's
Yeah,
so bad. And then the
yeah,
play experience is really, really boring.
yeah.
All you do is play the same card over and over again. Your opponents know exactly what you're going to do, and then you yourself get bored. Now, this one happens to be a green sorcery, which is not
Yeah.
green's normal thing. Um, and so maybe there's a case to be said about like you don't fully play as many slime against humanities as possible, and you like try to turbo mill slash exile some with some collect evidence cards or something, but like I don't know. It
That seems
also
awful.
it boils down to this is kind of a crappy card that is going to cost $4. You know, like
Right.
because you're going to need as many copies as possible to put in your deck or whatever in paper. I
Yeah.
just think these aren't. I just think I don't know. I don't know if I'm just like
I don't like really like the design of you can have any number. It's like
yeah.
it's
I
never felt right to me because it's like that's a rule of the game that's like exterior to what the card knows. Feels like breaking
ex-
the fourth wall a little bit to me.
mhm. It they
It's like
do. I think the what was the one that
I get that it's their way of representing like a swarm, you know?
yeah.
I think
I,
there are other ways you
the
can do
thing
that.
is that reading the card makes you think of all these cool things and it's like oh what a sweet idea, but then when you play the deck it usually kind of just feels terrible, and then
Yeah,
it's like a funny idea that's not even fun, and
right.
that's what I don't like more about it. And so when I see people get really excited about it I just feel like oh you're going to go through the same thing I went through, where I
Yeah,
spent time and put energy and thought into a deck that ended up being terrible and it wasn't fun to play, and I just got rid of it and it just kind of dwindled into nothing, and my excitement just like collapsed because the card was so awful. So
yeah.
that is
So I
that's
just never was into them, so I never tried to build any
yeah.
decks that were
Oh
like all relentless rats or whatever.
yeah, yeah. It was not one of the first FNMs I went to. Somebody was playing Relentless Rats, and the other person played Eradicate, which is a removal spell that kills a creature and then rips it from their hand and their library and their graveyard into
Right.
exile. And I thought that was the funniest thing ever. But for some reason, it made me want to play Relentless Rats and not
Yeah,
play
yeah.
Eradicate.
Not eradicated.
No,
Yeah,
no, no, no. That's not fun. I want to play Relentless
yeah.
Rats.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, I think the one thing that's possibly interesting is like there's like the one drop that's in black that like it's a demon if you have six of them or something. I can't remember what
Mhm.
that card's called,
Yeah, yeah, that one.
but I think it still has the same thing of like, hey, just play a bunch of stupid ones, and then hopefully you get six, and so you can go get a demon. Like
Right.
that's the whole game plan, and that it seems really cool at first, but anyway,
It's not. Yeah.
I'm talking too much about it. Let's go to the next card.
All right, for my overrated card, surprisingly, I actually had a few options. Usually, I'm not dialed in enough to what people are saying to strong opinions here.
Hmm.
Um, but this one I feel pretty good about because it's a reprint that I have played with quite a bit, and it is not as good as people think it is. And that card is Assassin's Trophy. Um,
Nice, good one.
People are talking about this card like saying, well, I guess green black is the best deck in the format now, or like the best mid-range deck at least. And I'm like, what? Like, you clearly haven't played enough with this card. Like, it's maybe a one of in older formats. You played a little bit of it in standard, but I'm not even sure it penetrated standard that much when it was printed because giving your opponent a land is a big deal.
Hmm.
Now, this can hit lands, but what are you hitting? Like, you trying to make it a little awkward for domain. You hit a tri-land, and they only get a basic, and that's not worth a card generally. So I don't know. The format has so much good efficient removal
Hmm.
that while I think you will play this a copy or two in your Golgari mid-range decks,
Not
maybe
four.
just because it's like I think the biggest thing is it can hit like leyline binding.
Hmm. That's the biggest
Um,
thing.
so you would play a copy or two for its versatility, but yeah, not four, and it's not going to make Golgari the best deck in the format
No,
or even the best mid-range deck in the format. It's just not that powerful. It's not that big an upgrade over like what just black has access to, and so it's not enough to push Golgari past Esper.
not when you already have Boseiju or stuff like you're already playing Boseiju. So like
Right.
maybe you'll play this once that rotates, and that basically you have like one slot in your deck to be like, I can blow up a thing and give them a land at like a very opportune time. And
Yeah.
because Boseiju already holds that slot, like you just don't want more copies of cards that do that. And I
Right. You
don't
don't want to be just giving them, you don't want to be
know.
ramping them as much as that
No.
deck would imply.
And like,
Um,
what are the lands you're trying to blow up? If you are blowing up lands, like you said, Triome, sure, Triome,
Creature
uh,
lands, but
creature lands,
removal kills creature
Mirex.
lands already.
You
Yeah,
could you could blow
Mirrex,
up
I guess.
you could blow up a Mirex,
Yeah.
um, but that's kind of it. Yeah, not a huge fan. Don't.
I think people always underestimate this drawback. Like even when it was on
Mhm,
Path to Exile back in the day, it's like this is
mhm.
serious drawback.
Serious, really serious.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I remember when Assassin's Trophy first came out, and it was the big card to get. Like it was like, oh, that's the best card to have. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, we did. Were there creature lands in the standard format at the time? I can't
I
remember.
don't
I don't think so.
no.
And then it just
No.
like the price just tanked because people were like, oh, this card's not good.
Right.
Um, so no, I agree. Yeah,
So it seems like we're going through that all over again,
yeah.
except we've had a little power creep on top of it
Hmm.
now. Like
Yeah, that's true. Um, yeah, it's funny. I didn't even like. I thought about this card, but it seemed so ubiquitous of like, oh yeah, that card's not nearly as good as people think it is. That I just like
yeah,
skipped over it. But
it's the
yes,
Reddit communities I'm tuned into are
oh
like,
yeah,
oh come on, like green black's so good now. I'll have to play against this. They're still whining about Shieldred, so uh,
yeah, that's
it's
true.
like, well, this kills Shieldred. Like, guys, you can't have it both ways, man. They print a
um,
good removal spell you think is great. You're not allowed to complain if you've been complaining about a creature this whole time.
that's true. Do you have an underrated card for us?
Sure do. This we already talked about a little bit, but this seems to be one of the more divisive cards that I've seen, and you even said you didn't really like it. So um, I am going out on a limb and saying Urgent Necropsy is pretty good, and I think people think it sucks. So we already sort of talked about that before, but
Mhm.
this is the two black green where you can destroy up to one target artifact, up to one target creature, up to one target enchantment, up to one target planeswalker at instant speed. But you do have to collect evidence X,
Mhm.
where X is the total mana value of those permanents. So obviously, if you didn't have to collect evidence, the cards would be nutso bonkers ridiculous. But the limiting factor is the evidence collecting. So I think you're just gonna be able to find enough to get a 2-for-1 out of this a lot of the time.
Mhm.
And that's something the Golgari deck is it's gonna like. I think this actually is gonna help push them. I still don't think this is gonna make them the best mid-range deck or anything like that. But this is what's gonna help them more than Assassin's Trophy, actually. Because it lets you get ahead.
Mhm.
Whereas Assassin's Trophy actually puts you a little behind.
Behind
Assassin's
because.
Trophy is like you should think of it as a necessary evil. If there's
Mhm.
something that I just can't deal with, this does it at a cost.
Mhm.
Thoughtseize is a bit like that as well.
Mhm.
This card is what can help pull you ahead because you can kill two things.
Yeah. So I did see someone. I don't think this deck is this isn't a scenario that's going to happen a ton, but it was the type of thing that I was like, I don't like that.
Right.
But they were basically saying like, what's a card that we play for like 2 mana that has a huge mana value? And in the domain decks, it's the freaking herd migration, where they're like, oh, two
Mhm.
mana, put this big, what it's 6 mana, 8 mana spell or whatever in your graveyard. If you end up making some sort of situation where like maybe you're not doing domain, but that's the card that you're specifically trying to use with the
Right.
urgent necropsy. I was like, having access to something like that, just because you know urgent necropsy is a card that you want to be playing.
Or even maybe you play Liliana, right? And you're just discarding cards every turn.
That's true too. So, yeah, that sounded grosser to me. Um,
Yeah.
I I was more interested in a way of like making sure that you could play this on four, or you didn't have to have like you didn't have to exile your whole graveyard to do it.
Right.
Um, but
Just think you're also not that upset if this is like I destroy your Shieldred and your treasure token or your clue tokens. Like,
yeah,
okay,
hmm
it's not getting you ahead by that much, but it's fine.
yeah, that's true. Um, so I do think it will be probably good. It'll
Yeah,
be
I
played for
think it's
sure.
pretty good. I don't think it's amazing.
hmm
Like, it is a pretty serious cost, and there will be times when you just want to kill one thing with this and you can't. Um, but I think that's probably balanced out by the times you do legitimately get two real cards with this.
Yeah, that's true. Um, my underrated card, I actually can't really tell if people. There are some people who are saying that this is just fine, but I don't know. I think this card seems pretty good. If you're trying to like sneakily get rid of some of the stuff that we need to get rid of, that were like maybe too high costing, or if I'm specifically targeting one deck, which is the domain deck because I hate it. Um, a card that people should talk more about or put in their sideboards is probably Pick Your Poison, which is just a single
Hmm.
green for a sorcery. You get to choose one. Each opponent sacrifices an artifact, each opponent sacrifices an enchantment, or each opponent sacrifices a creature with flying. But like a 1 mana way to get rid of their leyline binding that they just played on your creature.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Usually they only have one or two, and they're both leyline binding, and they both have creatures that you want, so you just get them back.
Yeah.
Uh, this kills Atraxa when they have an empty board and they play the Atraxa to stabilize, and you get to 1 mana kill a creature with flying.
Yeah. Or Archangel of Wrath.
Yep, and that's really annoying as well. Um, I don't know. I think that the fact that this is 1 mana makes it so interesting.
Yeah.
Everything else costs so much more. Being able to do this and play a 3 drop on the same turn on turn four, that sounds fantastic to me. 2 copies in the sideboard, would love it.
Yeah, I like
And
it.
would
It's a really good sideboard card.
Yeah. So not super splashy or super hard hitting, but it's a
Yeah,
card
yeah.
that I constantly see and be like, oh, this seems great.
It's a
Um,
great choice for something that's probably flying under the radar.
that
Because
it
it
just
looks similar to a lot of stuff we've had,
yeah,
but you have to remember like this one's 1 mana. And I actually like the Edict sort of
effect.
version of it.
Yeah. We
Um,
also kind of like the majority of the time the edict effects for stuff, Shield's edict does do a lot,
yeah,
gets around a lot of things. And then
Children's
these
Edict is one of the best edicts ever. So
yeah, and like these specific they're doing a, they're making better modal cards and realizing
modal edicts is a cool thing.
yeah,
'Cause it's like it nullifies or it mitigates the downside of the edict
yeah, it's
by getting
similar.
making it more targeted.
It's similar to the mind rot we have in this set, that's modal, where you could also just use it as a coercion to like look at their hand. That
Right.
card's not good, but the fact that they're like, okay, we need to start pushing this a little bit. You need to have more options for these
Yeah.
types of cards. I like
Right.
this, and
Because Thoughtseize is brutal when they have two cards in hand. It's like whatever.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think this card's great, and we'll be seeing sideboards as long as we have some green decks that will be doing well. Nice. We went through a whole worthless lot, and I didn't spend the whole time hoping that there's a mono green deck. I was fighting every urge in my body because we've spent almost a whole year of picking worthless slots that are like, well, if green is good, if a mono green deck really works out, if green stompy works out, that tends to be our thing. Um,
Just
sweet.
never does.
Never ever does. It'll come back at one point. There's some cool cards in the set, but I don't think that they're going to be the ones that bring us to mono greenland. Jeff, are we ready to go to the last call? It's been a long episode, and I think we're
Yeah.
ready to turn in. Um, so we have a beer to rate this evening. We need to rate it on scale from bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. Now, everyone's at different tiers at different times, so don't feel bad when we say that bronze beers are trash. They're horrible. You can't even drink them. You have to spit them out and pour them on the ground.
Silver beers are bad or boring, so macro brews tend to find themselves in this category.
Gold beers are fine, but you probably won't drink them again.
Platinum are solid. You will drink this again.
Diamond beers are exceptional, and you will recommend these to your friends.
Mythic are the best of the best. These are the Niv Mizzet Guild. But no, sorry, these are the War Leaders calls of the beer world. The No More Lies, the best cards.
Mhm. uh, so Jeff, we have this barrel aged golden sour here. I'm interested to hear what you think about it, because this is not the type of beer that you would. I obviously bought this and brought this to the
Yeah,
show.
Zach picked it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it's pretty good. It was a little sweet for me. I found it to be a bit sweet.
Interesting.
Maybe that's like the real fruit or something. Um, but generally speaking, I felt like I was drinking a beer. So that's usually my complaint about
Hmm.
these kinds of things. Is like, it doesn't feel like I'm drinking a beer. It feels like I'm drinking fruit juice mixed with some sort of alcohol.
Something.
Um, so yeah, it tasted like a kind of sweet and sour beer to me.
Yeah, it felt very tart to me. So I was like almost hoping for a little bit more sweetness. I think so.
Oh
That's
yeah.
funny, kind of funny. Um, and
I mean, it was definitely sour.
it was definitely sour. Very
Yeah.
like sour candy sour almost
But I guess
like
it's the type of
puckering
sour that
your
I always associate with sweet things. So that might have been what it was.
I mean possibly. Um, but with that being said, uh, I have no idea if there was peach in this or not.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know if I got peach specifically.
it tasted really sour, tart.
And peaches aren't sour, so
No, and they have more body than this. I would probably say that they kind of lost themselves in this. Um,
Mhm.
I would probably still try other ones that they had made in this series. It seems like there's more than one.
Right,
And
because it says peach at the
yeah,
bottom and
I'm
like, yeah.
I'm gonna be interested in like a barrel aged sour, but this specific one, I thought it was good, but I'm not huge on it, honestly. I think I was really hoping for something exciting and like
Yeah,
new, and this felt very one note kind of tart
gotcha.
to me.
Yeah.
So I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah. I think I was just gonna put this at gold as like I think fine, but won't really drink it again. Is
Yeah,
pretty much how I feel about it.
yeah, it's definitely. I'm gonna agree with you. It's gold. On like our sour beer scale, it's not up there. We've
Hmm.
had good sour
Had
beers that are very
some good
complex,
ones.
and most
Yeah.
of the time I want it to be like slightly sour with like other things going on, and this one just felt like it was sour.
Right.
Um, so bummer. That's so strange because usually barrel aged would really mellow it out. So I wonder what this tasted like before it was in the barrel.
Hmm.
Um,
It's just lemon juice.
yeah, literally. uh, all right. Well, Jeff, great episode. Let's go to closing time. Um, so if you want to talk to us about our rants on horror movies slash all the cards we talked about today, you can find us at Arena Regulars on Twitter and Instagram.
can also find us on Arena itself under the username Arena Regulars Podcast.
If you want to talk to me personally, just come into my Twitch stream. I stream Monday through Wednesday from 10 to 2 Eastern Time at regular_Zach.
Yeah, you can also join our Discord channel. The link is down below in the show notes. He'll be regular Zach, and I'll be regular Jeff, and we can talk about what we learned watching Zach stream.
Probably what not to do. That tends to be the lesson that I teach you and myself over and over again. Um, Also, if you like the podcast, please tell your friends about it. It means a lot and it's really helpful. You can leave comments and subscribe and do a lot of stuff, but honestly, telling people is the best way to grow the show. This has been the Arena Regulars.
Reminding you that if you want to succeed at Murders at Karlov Manor Limited, you better start walking those dogs.
Good night. All right, that's fine.